Part 1. The Internet we thought we knew. There was a time when the Internet felt undeniably human. The early web of the 1990s and early 2000s was clumsy, slow, and deeply personal. People built their own websites by hand, individual pages about hobbies, interests, obsessions. Forums were filled with strangers debating things they genuinely cared about. You could feel the personality behind every post. The Internet wasn't clean. It wasn't curated. It was chaotic in the way that only real human behavior can be chaotic. There were arguments, inside jokes, communities that formed around obscure interests and developed their own cultures over years. If you spent enough time in a forum, you began to recognize voices. You could tell instinctively who was thoughtful and who was performing. That version of the Internet had texture. When social media arrived in the mid-2000s, it accelerated everything. Facebook connected people who had never been connected. Twitter gave everyone a microphone. YouTube handed the power of broadcast television to anyone with a camera and a story. For a moment, it felt like the most democratic communication system in human history. And then, quietly, systematically, the machines moved in. Part 2. The origin of the dead Internet theory. The dead Internet theory did not originate in a research lab or a university paper. It emerged, appropriately, from the Internet itself. In the early 2020s, users on forums, particularly on communities like 4chan and later on Reddit, began noticing something they struggled to articulate. The Internet felt different. Not slower. Not worse, exactly. Just hollow. Conversations that should have felt spontaneous felt scripted. Viral content followed patterns so predictable they seemed engineered. The same talking points appeared across multiple platforms simultaneously. Comments sections felt populated by accounts that existed only to react, amplify, and disappear. Every day, billions of people use the Internet. But what if a large part of it isn't human anymore? Not in a science fiction sense. Not in a theoretical sense. Right now. Today. On the platforms you opened this morning. The posts you scrolled past. The comments you read. The accounts that liked your photo. The articles that appeared in your feed. How many of them were written, generated, or amplified by something that has never once been alive? This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a question that engineers, researchers, and cybersecurity analysts are asking with increasing urgency. And the answer, the honest, documented, data-supported answer, is more unsettling than most people are prepared to hear. The Internet is already dead. An investigative documentary. By Art of Crime. Let's begin. One post, written anonymously and circulated widely, put it plainly. The Internet, the writer argued, had been captured. Not by any single government or corporation, but by a diffuse network of automated systems, artificial accounts, and coordinated manipulation, all designed to simulate human activity while serving the interests of whoever was paying for the simulation. The post was largely dismissed at first. Forum speculation, digital paranoia. But then researchers started looking at the numbers. And the numbers were difficult to dismiss. Studies examining social media activity found that a substantial percentage of accounts on major platforms showed behavioral patterns inconsistent with human users. Researchers at Carnegie Mellon University analyzing Twitter traffic during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 found that nearly half of the accounts spreading information about the pandemic showed signs of bot behavior. Nearly half. On a platform used by hundreds of millions of people as a primary news source. This was not fringe speculation. This was peer-reviewed research published in academic journals. The dead Internet theory, for all its conspiratorial origins, had found something real beneath its surface. Part 3. The rise of bots. To understand what has happened to the Internet, you have to understand what bots actually are, and how completely normal they have become. A bot is simply an automated account or program designed to perform actions that mimic human behavior. Following accounts, liking posts, leaving comments, sharing content, generating traffic. They were not invented for manipulation. The earliest bots served useful purposes, archiving web pages, indexing content for search engines, automating repetitive tasks. The Internet as we know it runs partly on automation that no one questions. But automation is a tool. and tools follow incentives. When social media platforms began measuring success in engagement, likes, shares, follower counts, comments, they created a marketplace. And in any marketplace where there is demand, supply will arrive. The demand was simple: visibility, popularity, influence. The supply was bots, millions of them. By the mid-2010s, purchasing fake followers and fake engagement had become an industry unto itself. Businesses bought bot followers to appear more credible. Political campaigns used bot networks to manufacture the appearance of grassroots support. Influencers inflated their metrics to attract brand deals. Musicians used bots to push songs up streaming charts. Twitter, before its acquisition by Elon Musk in 2022, had long maintained that fake and spam accounts represented fewer than 5% of its monetizable daily active users. Musk's own analysts, during the acquisition process, suggested the real figure was significantly higher, a dispute that became the center of a high-profile legal battle before the deal was eventually completed. Facebook has disclosed in regulatory filings that it removes billions of fake accounts every year. Billions, not millions. In a single quarter in 2019, the company reported removing approximately 2.2 billion fake accounts. Think about that number carefully. 2.2 billion fake accounts in 3 months. From one platform. The scale of automated fake identity on the internet is not a glitch. It is not an anomaly being corrected. It is a permanent, structural feature of how the modern internet operates. And social manipulation was only the beginning. Political actors recognized early that bots were extraordinarily effective at shaping perceived consensus. If a message is amplified 10,000 times by automated accounts, it begins to appear organic. It gets picked up by real users who assume, reasonably, that something shared that widely must reflect genuine sentiment. This technique, manufacturing the illusion of consensus, has been documented in political contexts across dozens of countries. Research institutions studying computational propaganda, including the Oxford Internet Institute, have published extensive evidence of coordinated bot activity during elections in the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Brazil, and many others. The bots were not just selling products. They were selling reality. Part 4. The Age of AI Content. The bot era was, in retrospect, only the first phase. Because bots had a limitation. They could amplify. They could like and share and follow. But they could not, convincingly, create. A bot-generated comment was easy to spot, repetitive, contextless, grammatically strange. A bot-written article was detectable. The automation was visible at the edges if you looked closely enough. That limitation no longer exists. The release of large language models, most publicly ChatGPT in late 2022, fundamentally changed what automated content could look like. For the first time, artificial intelligence could produce text that was, in most cases, indistinguishable from human writing. Coherent, contextual, stylistically varied, capable of argument, nuance, and even apparent emotion. The internet had already been flooded with bots. Now it was about to be flooded with something far harder to detect. Content farms, websites designed to generate advertising revenue through traffic rather than genuine readership, had existed for years. They were visible enough. Shallow articles, obvious keyword stuffing, writing that felt like it was produced by someone paid $2 per piece. AI changed their economics entirely. What once required a team of underpaid writers could now be produced by a single person running automated prompts. Thousands of articles per day. Tens of thousands per month. All of them coherent. All of them optimized for search engines. None of them written by a human who cared about the subject. A 2023 analysis by researchers tracking AI-generated content found hundreds of websites producing hundreds of articles daily with little or no human editorial oversight, many of them ranking on the first page of search results for queries millions of people type every day. The problem extended beyond articles. AI image generation tools produced photographs that did not exist of people who did not exist at scales that no human photographer could approach. Synthetic influencers, AI-generated social media personas with consistent aesthetics, posting schedules, and follower counts in the hundreds of thousands, began appearing across Instagram and TikTok. Some were disclosed as AI. Many were not. YouTube, the world's second-largest search engine, began filling with AI-narrated videos, algorithmically assembled from scraped text, read aloud by synthetic voices, monetized through the same advertising systems that reward human creators. The comment sections beneath these videos contained AI-generated comments, amplified by bot accounts, watched by real humans who had no reliable mechanism to distinguish any of it from the genuine article. This is where the dead internet theory stops being a theory. It stops being speculation. The question is no longer whether a significant portion of internet content is automated, artificially generated, or bot-amplified. The data confirms it is. The question that remains, the harder question, is what that means for the humans still using it. Part 5. The Internet of the Future. Here is what is true. You are still human. The person reading this, the person watching this, the people who made this human. And millions of real conversations still happen online every day. Genuine connections form. Real journalism is published. Authentic creative work finds audiences. The internet has not been entirely evacuated of humanity. But the ratio is shifting. And more importantly, the infrastructure of trust that allows humans to find each other online, search engines, recommendation algorithms, trending topics, engagement metrics, is being systematically distorted by automated activity. When a search engine ranks content, it uses signals. When an algorithm decides what to show you, it uses signals. Likes, shares, comments, time spent, clicks. All of these signals can be and are being manufactured. This means the map is being redrawn by entities that have no interest in where you actually want to go. You search for information. The results are optimized not for accuracy but for the appearance of authority. You scroll through a feed. The trending topics are not necessarily what real people are discussing. They are what automated systems have decided should appear to be trending. You read the comments. Some percentage of them were generated by software running on a server somewhere, designed to shape your perception of how other humans responded to what you just read. The mechanism of perceived consensus, the fundamental human instinct to look at what others think before forming our own opinions, has been infiltrated. And the solution is not obvious. Platforms have significant financial incentives to measure engagement, because engagement drives advertising revenue. Auditing the authenticity of that engagement rigorously would almost certainly reduce the numbers they report to investors. The incentive structure does not reward transparency. Regulation has moved slowly, in part because the technology moves faster than legislative understanding can follow, and in part because the political systems that would need to regulate these platforms have themselves been targets of the manipulation they would be tasked with controlling. Individual users have limited tools. Some researchers and journalists have developed methods for detecting bot networks and AI-generated content. Browser extensions, AI detection tools, and manual analysis can identify some of what is artificial. But these methods require effort, expertise, and access to platform data that most users do not have. What the future looks like depends, in part, on which forces win a competition that most people do not know is happening. One possibility: platforms develop and deploy more sophisticated detection systems, regulatory frameworks emerge with real enforcement power, and AI-generated content is required to be disclosed as such. The internet becomes more legible. Humans can navigate it with greater confidence. Another possibility: the economics of automated content generation continue to outpace the economics of detection. AI systems become indistinguishable from human creators by any available test. The concept of authenticity online becomes effectively meaningless, not because humans have left the internet, but because there is no longer any reliable way to find them. A third possibility, perhaps the most honest: both of these things happen simultaneously in different corners of the internet for different populations at different levels of literacy and access. The internet fractures not into darkness and light, but into varying shades of legibility. Some communities maintain genuine human connection. Others become so saturated with automation that human participation becomes indistinguishable from its absence. The dead internet theory, at its most extreme, claims the internet is already gone, that human activity is now a minority presence, managed and manipulated by automated systems serving invisible interests. That claim, in its absolute form, is not supported by the available evidence. But the underlying anxiety that produced it, That is not paranoia. That is pattern recognition. The internet you grew up with, or the internet you imagined, clean and human and democratic, was always partly a fiction. But it was a fiction with enough truth in it to be worth believing in. What's changing now is not just the ratio of bots to humans. It's the plausibility of the fiction itself. Every day, the question becomes harder to answer with confidence. How much of what you are reading right now is real? How much of what you will read tomorrow? And if you cannot tell the difference, does it matter? The internet began as a tool for human beings to find each other across distance. Whether it remains that is a question each generation of users will have to answer for themselves. But only if they think to ask it.